Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex. And today I want to make a renewed list or ranking of all of the native tier 2 characters aside from the 2 epic quest characters. And I wanted to put them in an order that would make sense for the average player and what they should be aiming for and what I think are, or who I think are the most valuable native tier 2 characters, because their cost is expensive and is extreme in terms of the resources, in terms of the gold, in terms of the bios, and it's really nice to know what your plan is before you go into it, especially with a native tier 2, because some of these are weeks or if not months away. To set that goal and to be confident in your decision based on the current meta and how things are going to end up in the game is important. And I think having that distinction and knowing which ones are better than others for etc. reasons is good. Right off the bat, though, I am going to exclude the 2 epic quest characters, Doctor Strange and Wolverine, because while their costs in some ways are very similar to some of these native tier 2 characters in terms of black antimatter and feathers and things like that, there's also a bunch of other costs involved that kind of muddy the field in terms of the length of time it's going to take, but also the amount of resources in terms of the research missions, in terms of additional characters that you need to rank up. So it's a bit too complicated. It's much harder of a comparison to make. So for this one, I'm only going to be talking about the Black Order characters and Thanos, Dormammu, Odin, and then all of the new X-Men esque mutants that we got. Scarlet Witch, Quicksilver, Thanos, or Cable, sorry, and Jean Grey. Jean Grey I will be talking about, and then I'm not going to be able to talk about Apocalypse yet because he's very, very new, and unfortunately I don't even rank him in the top 5 best native tier 2s yet, so don't even worry about Apocalypse. I feel that there's very little rush, if any, to get him, unless you're just trying to flex mommy or daddy's credit card for all the bros. So another thing that we do need to take into consideration before we jump into this comparison is the fact that unlike the Black Order and unlike Odin, I guess, all of the other native tier 2 characters can have a pretty hefty or a steep unlocking fee. So the fee for unlocking Cable, Scarlet Witch, and Quicksilver can be very expensive if you don't have the crystals to fast forward the quest results, or if you don't have the capability of finishing the different quests in order to reduce the cost to 0 and unlock them. I do have to take that into consideration, but we're not going to count that in terms of their value that they bring to the table, because like Dormammu, they also have some kind of barrier in order to be unlocked with the hidden quests. I'm just going to be gauging their value based on what they bring to your roster, assuming you can unlock them and start ranking them up, etc. Now, of course, we immediately have to create 2 different categories because there are 2 different cost levels, and the raw cost is the most important part because that's what you're investing in. So of course we have the 4,400 cost characters, and those are the ones that cost black antimatter. These are, in my opinion, the cheapest option possible, and that is the whole Black Order minus Thanos. So you've got Corvis, Proxima, Ebony, Supergiant, and Black Dwarf, and then you have the more recent addition of Quicksilver. Now, of this list of characters, I think far and away Quicksilver is the #1 character. He is one of the best characters in the game now, mainly because he's our only native speed hero. He's a fantastic one at that, and he is a very consistent counter to the blast meta that we've seen overrun this game. He beats up his sister, he beats up the Doctor, he even beats up the Phoenix. He does it all, baby. Iframes galore, self buffs, awesome animations. When this dude gets a uniform, all hell will break loose. I probably think that some people would rank him as the #1 PvP character. The meta of Quicksilver is here, and the constant Pierce meta with the tornadoes is a serious one and not something you should overlook or take lightly. I'm not going to go so far as to call him the best character in the game, but he's definitely, absolutely, unequivocally the #1 option at the 4,400 black antimatter cost. In addition to 440 black antimatter, you're obviously going to need an additional 1,350 Chaos Nordstones. You're going to need 33 million gold, and you're going to need about 301 or 304 bios. So do keep that in mind as well. But I think among those costs, Quicksilver is absolutely #1. If you go further down that list, I do think that the next best target, if you want to spend that much in terms of resources, is Corvis. The reason why I choose Corvis is he can revive, so any mistakes you make, whether you're playing manually or it's PvP and it's timeline or whatever, you get a second chance. He's got a very well-rounded kit: energy damage, physical damage, immunity, clones, and he fits the billing for the universal supervillain day. He can score close to, or the closest to, Dormammu, which is the one that people often go for if they haven't built up Thanos. After Corvus, I think the rest are kind of a wash at this point. Ebony, Proxima, Supergiant, and Black Dwarf are all good for different reasons. Mostly they're good for Shadowland as universal types and as villains. I would probably rank them in the order that I've given there, starting with Ebony and ending with Black Dwarf. I do put Ebony a bit ahead of Supergiant because of the fact that he has clones, he's got more iframes, and it seems to work a little bit better in his favor. He's got a little bit more AoE than Proxima, and I think that he puts out more damage without a damage proc than she does. And then the rest of the characters, or the other four that we have to talk about, are the 8,800 characters. And these are the ones that cost double what we have just discussed for Quicksilver and the Black Order. So we're talking now about Thanos, Dormammu, Odin, and unfortunately we're also talking about Scarlet Witch. Now I think, especially given his recent update with the uniform, Thanos is #1 on this list. He head and shoulders above Dormammu. He can obviously outscore him in Extreme Alliance battle. He seems to be a better option and a more reliable pick for PvP. He just does everything better. His kit is better. The only thing he doesn't have is the revive, but his heal is so consistent, it's insane. And his stats go crazy when you upgrade his uniform because it goes all the way up to plus 32, which is bonkers. Oh, it's actually plus 35. Plus 35 all attack and all defense. He's rocking his own set of Korean cards. So very, very strong. Definitely #1, although you have to include that additional crystal cost for his uniform, so that may bump him down for you a little bit. After Thanos, I would put Dormammu next, but he's a definite step down from the big Mad Titan. If he got a uniform in the future, he may be able to come back from it, but he is starting to lose some of his shine, and his rotation is quite frustrating. He's a bit of a clunker in terms of that. After Dormammu, I would then put Odin next, again losing more of his shine now, but still the best universal superhero that we have, because Netmarble doesn't seem to want to give us any more universal types. Definitely needs a uniform to upgrade his skill set. He has fallen behind massively. Although his skills still deal massive damage, they just don't do enough. He doesn't have enough crowd control or additional effects the way that now Thanos does, with all these different, dot damages and debuffs and, channeling with the kind of flinch lock mechanic. So that would put Odin at 3rd. And then unfortunately, I would probably have to put Scarlet Witch 4th. I think for her cost, Scarlet Witch is one of the worst investments for a native tier 2 character for the average player in the game. And I say that not because she's a bad character. I don't want you to think I'm bashing her or I'm saying Scarlet Witch is a poor investment. I just mean that the amount of return you're going to get, the amount of impact she's going to have on your game at the moment is very minimal. There is no game mode where she outshines anyone else. Even her billing as a Jean Grey killer with her Phoenix Force or Chaos Magic ability doesn't live up to the billing. Her brother does a better and more consistent job of killing Jean Grey than she does. It's really a bit of a disappointment at this point. I'm kind of puzzled and still trying to figure out where to put her in. She seems to be a little bit more consistent for something like Alliance Tournament in the future, but let's face it, most of you are not going to be ranking her up for Alliance Tournament anyways, so she falls way down on that list of most expensive native tier 2 characters to get. Finally, we have the 4,400 feather characters, and I put these ones aside because it's a bit of a dual track mentality that you have to have. We only right now have these 2 characters that I'm going to discuss that require feathers. We have Cable and Jean Grey. I know we also have Apocalypse, but again, I don't see him being very impactful. If I had to rank him, he would definitely be under both Cable and Jean Grey, although he does take Carnage's spot. I really don't see the need for him just yet. So just looking at Cable and Jean Grey, I would have to say that I put Cable a little bit ahead of Jean Grey, and primarily I do so because Jean Grey requires so much in advance of getting her. Just before you get her, you already have to have 5 other characters tier 2. It requires you to finish the X-Men Epic Quest, requires you to get Magneto to tier 2. It's a lot of investment. Whereas, as soon as you unlock Cable's quest and as soon as you do the world boss 10 times, you can start spending your feathers. And that's where that dual track mentality comes in. Because if you're an intermediate level player and you've already started your role, you've got the snowball going for Black Antimatter and Chaos Nordstones, and you're building that up steadily, and you've started to grind feathers and crystals, you're gonna want to start to pick 2 characters. So in that case, if you're not ready for Jean Grey, you're not just gonna let the feathers build up and max out, because we know they max out at 2,000. You're much better off starting on Cable. I don't think that saving your feathers and maxing out and saving them for Jean is actually a wise choice if you have the opportunity to build Cable. He's actually better for Extreme Alliance Battle than Jean is. He's definitely worse for PvP, but if that's not a very important feature for you, Cable is going to bring more to your gameplay than Jean Grey will. I do believe that Jean Grey will make Shadowland easier for you. She's basically an auto-complete on any stage, a la someone like Doctor Strange, but Cable can complete almost any stage, so he's really not that far behind. And in things like World Boss and in other game modes, he's really going to shine. So I would definitely consider him an option. In addition, he only costs 3,000 bios to sacrifice, and I think the sacrificial bios to level up the character are one of the biggest barriers for intermediate level players, because they just don't have a lot of excess bios. I see the question come up a lot, where can I get bios? The answer is World Boss Invasion. But the fact that he costs half of the bios, and the fact that you don't need to tier 2 5 other characters before you get him, even at 1 star, does make the evaluation a little bit easier for me. But it's basically 1A and 1B. Jean Grey is better than Cable, but I think it's a wiser option to go first for Cable if you have the mission unlocked. Obviously, those unlock quests can be difficult if you don't already have Quicksilver, etc. But if you do, then it becomes a bit of a no-brainer for me. So I think the final list looks a little bit something like this, and you may be a little bit upset that I've left the list incomplete, but I've done so because I want to leave it up to your discretion. Given the discussion that we've had, I think it's quite clear that the number 1 native tier 2 character to focus on in terms of both the cost and the value is Quicksilver. He's the cheapest, and he also will potentially give you the most value in return. I'm in love with this character. I think he's fantastic. Number 2, I think for a lot of the same reasons, is Cable. Much cheaper than Jean Grey in terms of prerequisites and in terms of bio cost. And also he will give you an outlet for all of those feathers that you've been hopefully building up. Third, I would have to put the Mad Titan Thanos, because having 3 heroes in the top 3 just doesn't make sense for, you know, hero and character balance if you're building a whole roster. And Thanos is one of the best PvP characters in the game, especially if you have his uniform. After Thanos, it really becomes a question of what you have and what you want. I think in terms of pure value, someone like Jean Grey would probably be the next best choice for 4th place, but you may want to slot someone else in there if, you know, for example, you don't want to use Thanos for Extreme Alliance Battle. You might want to then go for Corvis or go for Dormammu or something like that. But I think that those 3, as your first 3, should be a very strong consideration if you haven't already done so, or if you're just starting out and you want to know where to start. So let me know what you guys think. Hit me up in the comments if you disagree with the top 3, or if you have some suggestions and some reasons why the list at 4 and 5 should be locked in for certain characters. Please let me know. I did intentionally leave it blank to hear what you have to say, but also because I think imparting the top 3 is enough, and that you from there can make your own decisions and be on your merry way and succeed. And hopefully if you've succeeded, you can subscribe to keep enjoying the content. And of course, if you like what you see, I hope to see you again tomorrow. Take care.